Hello everybody, this is Himdad A.Muhammad with you again in another lesson from the module entitled Translation, Theory and Practice. This will be lesson 8. In this lesson we are going to talk about translation problems. Previously we have talked about linguistic problems of translation, but this will be about cultural problems. In order to understand what do you mean by cultural problems, we have to identify culture or define culture and determine or identify what goes into culture or what is the scope and domain of culture. In general, we can say that culture includes thoughts, communication, languages, practices, beliefs, values, customs and manners of interacting, roles, responsibilities, relations of social groups, religious groups, ethnic groups, and racial groups. We have also to know how is culture related to translation. Simply, we can say that the greater the differences between the source culture and the target culture, the greater the difficulties in translation, the greater the challenges would be for translators. So the more the cultures are different, the more liable are translators to face challenges and difficulties. According to Newmark, foreign cultural expressions include ecological, material, and social cultures, political, religious, artistic gestures, habits, idioms, proverbs, collocations, phrasal verbs, culture-bound expressions, and even figures of speech. So simply we can say that culture is like an iceberg. As you can see from the graph, what is visible is only the behavior, but what is invisible or invisible sources of culture, there are values, beliefs, and assumptions, and all these are reflected in language. We usually link culture with translation, and this is reflected in the characteristics of a good translator. We usually say a good translator must not only be bilingual, must not only know the two languages, but he should be at least bicultural, if not multicultural. So he should be aware of both the target and the source cultures. To clarify what we mean by cultural problems, let's start with an example. If a translator is asked to translate this simple English sentence into Kurdish, let's say. The child was baptized 1 week after he was born. Concentrate on the word baptized, which is a culture-bound term or culture-bound concept. It is specific to the English culture and more specifically to the Christian culture in the Western world, where a child, when it is born, they will take that child to the church in order to do some rituals and ceremony where they pour some water on the head of the child and then give it a name. This is all about the word baptism and the concept of baptism. But what would you do if you come across this word and you are asked to translate it and it is not found in your culture? So a good translation of this sentence would be, منداڵەکە بۆ ناولێنان بردرایە کڵێسا دوای هەفتەیەک لەدایک بوونی. baptized وا تەرجەمە دەکرێت کە ببردرێتە کڵێسا بۆ ناولێنان. So this is what I mean by cultural problems, and language is full of these culture-bound terms and these idiomatic expressions and proverbs and phrasal expressions, phrasal verbs, gestures, and all that we have talked about. So by now you know what do you mean by cultural problems. For this lesson, we are going to talk about only 3 of these problematic areas that are related to culture, and they are idioms, proverbs, and culture-bound words. We will try to give examples of each one separately so that it becomes more clear. Let's start with idiom. We have to start with a definition of idiom. It is usually defined as a group of words whose meaning is different from the meanings of the individual words. So the meaning of the whole words together is not the sum of individual meaning of words. So they are different. Look at this example of English idiom. Kick the bucket. Kick the bucket simply means مرد, and it has to do with death. Look at the word kick and look at the word buck alone. You know the meanings of these 2 words, I'm sure. But when they are put together and they are used as a group, as one group, one unit, an idiom, then their meaning is different. The black sheep. I'm sure you know the meaning of black and you know the meaning of sheep alone, individual words. But the black sheep is an English idiom, which means زي شرمزاری or play rush. He is the black sheep of the family. کەسە خراپەکەی ئەو خێزانەیە یان کەسێکە جێی شەرمەزاری ئەو خێزانەیە. Shake a leg. Shake a leg is an idiom which can be translated as پێتر بینە پێت سووکە when you are in a hurry and you want to do something. There is an idiom in English that has the name of Newcastle in it. So let me give you a simple introduction. Newcastle is a city located on the north bank of the River Tyne in northeast England, and it has been a large port and the center for coal exports. خلوص. هەناردەکردنی خلوص. Newcastle. So there is an English idiom that has this name: to carry coals to Newcastle. To carry coals to Newcastle. It means to take coals to Newcastle. The meaning of that idiom, if you are not aware of the English culture, and if you don't know this fact that Newcastle was the center of coal exports, not import, then you would not understand the meaning and it would be difficult for you to translate into Kurdish or any other language. So this idiom, it means to do something unnecessary or to do something that's worthless, that's useless. So how can you translate that? You cannot say خلوص دەبات بۆ Newcastle, because at that time it does not make sense and it does not convey the message in that idiomatic expression. In Kurdish, if you want to translate it to Kurdish, we have something like idiomatic expression that gives the same meaning. So we say in Kurdish awi لدنگ دادکته. Aw لدنگ دادکته. Ding is a large pot where it is used in order to cook or in order to press grain on it. So it is as if you are putting water in that large pot and you try to compress and crush the water, which is also useless and worthless, and it's not necessary. In English, we have another common idiom when you are asking somebody a favor, or when you ask somebody to do something for you. He may say, "Oh, I can do it. It's a piece of cake. I can do it. It is a piece of cake." A piece of cake, it means it is very easy. It is very easy to do, to conduct, to perform. So this is English culture. But what about Kurdish culture? How do Kurds express the concept of being easy or easiness of doing something? They don't say parche kek. No, they will not understand. But instead of that, in Kurdish, we have an equivalent idiom. Say, Hichnia, au khwardnawe. I can do it. I can do it easily. It's just like drinking water. So drinking water is the equivalent of a piece of cake in English. Let's start with proverbs and try to give some examples there. But before that, we have to define a proverb. A proverb is usually a short sentence. Don't forget, a short sentence. And usually it is known by many people, and it states something that's commonly experienced, or it is used in order to give an advice or warn somebody. But usually you say a lot in the fewest possible words. English, some examples of English proverbs, let's say. Birds of a feather flock together. This is an English proverb. If you are not aware of the English culture, then a translator might face difficulty and challenge in translating or in finding equivalent meaning of that one in the target language, that's Kurdish in our case, or in Arabic, for example. In Arabic, الطيور على أشكالها تقع. الطيور على أشكالها تقع. The English proverb means like-minded people are usually with each other. They usually keep each other's company. So الطيور على أشكالها تقع, that's the Arabic equivalent of that one. But in Kurdish, we have some options to do. Some of them might be very common and some of them might be informal, but we have options. Some people might say gyal serpenzi khoy darwe, even though this might not be exactly the same, but this is one of the options that we have. But we have two others, kurteu keje legdaje, this is exactly the same, or manzal sarqabi khoy doziawa yanditawa. This is also used in order to convey the same message of that English proverb. Another example would be he's on a wild goose chase. When you are after something that you cannot get, when you are seeking something that's difficult to get or impossible to get. What do Kurdish people say in this way? You can explain it, but it would be better for your translation to have the feature of naturalness, and naturalness is usually a proverb. It would be better to be translated as a proverb, but not word for word. You try to find cultural equivalence here. In Kurdish, we have something called Bedwai Klawi Baberdukotwa. You are chasing a hat that is being blown by a wind. So as if you are doing something impossible, or you wish for something that's impossible to get. Another common English proverb is even Homer sometimes nods. Homer, or Homeros, sometimes called Homer, is a great philosopher who is known to be very wise, but even he sometimes makes mistakes or sometimes says, I don't know. English people or English community culture, they use this proverb in order to say that everyone makes mistakes. No one is infallible. But it's not necessary to use the same proverb in Kurdish or in Arabic to mean the same thing. Arabs have their own culture and they have their own proverbs for that meaning, and Kurds have their own culture and they have their own proverbs for that one. In Arabic you say جل من لا يخطئ means there is no one who is infallible. In Kurdish, in the Kurdish culture and usually religious oriented cultures, mullahs, that are religious people, are known to be very clever, intelligent, and wise. And that's why this person is used instead of Homer, say, Malash ghalat. Even mullahs make mistakes. So this is exactly the same proverb, but in our own culture. So we talked about idioms, we talked about proverbs. Now, there are sometimes cultural gaps between languages. I mean, something is used as a symbol for something positive, but it is negative in another culture. If we just think of one example would be in English culture, for instance, the bird owl symbolizes wisdom. Kunda papu nishane danaiya لكالتوري إنجليزي. Owl symbolizes wisdom. But in Kurdish culture, it has a very negative connotation. As it represents bad luck. Shum, Dumor, Werana, Bakhtichi Kharab. You see, cultures are different. So when you have the word owl used symbolically in an English text, translators must be aware of the fact that they mean wisdom there. They don't mean bad luck. So you cannot translate an owl to symbolize wisdom in Kurdish. Okay, translators must be aware of that. In English culture and Western culture, they say a cat has 9 lives. A cat has 9 lives. This is something cultural. They believe that a cat has 9 lives, and each of these lives have a meaning or have a name also, but that's not our topic. But in Kurdish culture, they say Shilay Hawtruh. So it is 7. You cannot say translate the sentence Shile no ruhi here, so people will not understand or will think that you are not aware of your own culture, because in your culture they say Shile Haut Ruh and Shila Haut Ruhi Haya. That's why you have to be aware of these culture gaps or cultural differences between the source culture and the target culture. As white as snow. This is also a cultural thing. When they want to express purity or whiteness, so they compare it in English culture, they compare it to snow, because in their environment there is snow. In Kurdish environment also, wakba firspia, to denote purity or whiteness. But in some other cultures where there is no snow, they cannot express this because they will not understand it, and that will not be natural. I heard, for example, Arabs would say as white as cotton, waku loka spear. Waku loka spear, because that's specific to their environment or their living places and sites. In my salad days, this is an English concept when it is used when you are at your young age or when you are enjoying a luxury life or your prosperity and prosperous life. In Kurdish, you say Larojani Genzi and Larojani Haboni, Larojani Khoshi, and in Arabic they can say Fi Ayam al-Izz. Ayam al-Izz, it means the days where everything was good, was where they were happy and having a luxurious life. So we come to conclusions. Whenever we have an idiom, we have a proverb, or we come across a culture-bound term or concept, we have some options. The first thing that we have to look for is to have cultural equivalent, to see if you have something similar to that in your own culture. Either it is a proverb, or it's an idiom, or it is a culture-bound term. So it trains cats and dogs. You cannot translate it literally, word by word. You have to search for something that is used in your own culture. So baran bakhur dabare yan baran balizma dabaret. The second option is functional translation. Sometimes when you cannot find a cultural equivalent, then you have to go to the function of that one. For example, what's the function of hello in English? The function is either to start a conversation or to maintain social relations and social ties. So what is used in your culture in order to start a conversation or in order to maintain social relations? Either you say salam or you say salam alaikum, because they do the same function as hello. The third option is paraphrasing. You have to paraphrase it. For example, thesaurus and glossary. These two terms are used in English. For glossary, we can have the word farhangok. That's usually at the end of books or publications to define the key terminologies there. But thesaurus, we don't have it, so we have to paraphrase it. We have to explain it, that it is a kind of dictionary that groups words that are similar in the same domain, or semantically maybe in the same domain. Fourth option would be glossing. Glossing again is to use that word, but you add information to it. For example, if a Kurdish translator tries to make foreigners understand what does the word peshmerga mean, he cannot easily say peshmerga because they might not understand it. So you have to gloss it, you have to explain it, you have to add information. For example, I say peshmerga, which means Kurdish freedom fighters. Then it would be understood to all the audience. And the last one, the last option, is borrowing. Sometimes you don't have a cultural equivalence, you don't have functional translation, you are not able to paraphrase, and you are not able to gloss it. So what else do you have? You have to borrow it. You have to use a loan word. For example, if a translator faces a word like internet, so what options does he have? He doesn't have any cultural equivalence or any other option, just to take the word as it is and then use it in his speech or in his writing. Internet as internet, this is called borrowing, and that's very normal. Borrowing happens among languages, and usually languages that are come into contact. Thank you very much for your listening. Stay tuned for other videos.